welcome back. We'll now proceed with the second session, which is titled Between Disciplines. There was a question whether we should proceed in English, because we had a speaker from abroad, Marco from Graz, but now I assume everybody will...
Actually, I got a text from someone who's watching the stream, so maybe we can stick to English, considering
Okay,
that's what we planned. Yeah, let's do it.
So we'll stick in English. So welcome back to the second session, Between Disciplines. So it's almost the title of the conference, but now we focus on this space between disciplines as practitioners. And our first speaker is Lior Arbel. He's a researcher, designer, electrical engineer, and musician. He's working in various institutions all across Israel. I think primarily in Technion or? Primarily Ben-Gurion. Okay. And your research is in music technology and audio music acoustics and includes development of novel musical instruments. Technology for music education, virtual audio, and user-centered AI.
Okay.
Yeah. You will probably explain more. Thank you.
Should I just start, or you want to wait for?
I think we're going to stream it.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you. I'm just going to show a nice project from a few years ago. I went to a postdoc in Le Mans, that's France, 200 kilometers southwest of Paris. It is known for this, 24 hours of Le Mans car race. It was depicted in this film. So you go there and people get off the train and your buses to the car race. But they also have a university, which is really nice, and they have a nice acoustics department. And I went there for my postdoc and we created this kit of musical instruments. I brought some here. And the idea was this. In Le Mans, or generally, I think France and Europe, they have this tradition of lutherie sauvage. That's like Lutheran instrument making in the wild. They use all kinds of DIY household items to create whatever instruments. And sometime before I got there, they had the Merit project. The Merit project is an educational project where they show students, could be high school students, general audiences, and also undergrads, how they make musical instruments from household items. And the idea is to demonstrate it demystifies the instrument. So an instrument becomes something very simple. And we thought we can take that to the next level. We started looking at instruments. We are all instrument geeks. We collect instruments and play a lot of instruments. And we figured we can come up with a conceptual way to look at acoustic instruments that will be more specific to designers of musical instruments and to music acoustics. And we figured for the purpose of music acoustics education, we can describe acoustic musical instruments as composing of three components. They're generator, resonator, and radiator. So generator is how we excite the instrument. We strike, rub, pluck, blow, and so forth. The resonator is the physical object that vibrates and creates the initial sound. So it's a string, membrane, some rigid solid object like a cymbal or a bar, or it could be air inside a pipe, air inside a cavity, and so forth. And the radiator is the component that projects the sound outwards. Typically a soundboard, a membrane, a solid object like the bar itself, or an aperture and something like that. And I show why we think it's useful. Some examples, so the guitar is an instrument that we pluck, the resonator is a string, and it radiates through a soundboard. A cymbal is an instrument that we strike, the resonator is a shell, it's this plate. The same plate is also the radiator. And then if I were to think of a guitar and try to think what instruments resemble the guitar, so I guess first off I would say, mandolin and oud and stuff like that. These are all plucked string soundboard instruments. And then if I think a bit differently, I may say, for instance, a banjo. So a banjo is pluck and string, but the radiator is a membran rather than a soundboard. This is sort of typical and intuitive, but the kind of comparison that I will not usually make is thinking maybe there are instruments that are pluck and soundboard, but I'm not plugging a string, I'm plugging whatever, something else. And a nice example is a kalimba. If you think of it, a kalimba is really similar to a guitar. We plug, right? And we have a soundboard. I just do that. And this is a kalimba. So in many ways, a kalimba resembles a guitar. And that was the idea of that framework. So we went ahead and we created standalone modules of resonators and radiators. We use standard generators like standard beaters. We have a soundboard, a membran, a cone. This is like a horn of a straw violin. It's used for radiation. And then we have resonators, strings, tines, bars, a shell, and stuff like that. And they are all compatible. We connect them via a magnetic fastener. And the first thing that we're doing with it is education. And I'm actually using that in my courses at the Technion, so I will show you a couple of examples just to give you a gist of what's nice about it. Something that I show the students is the idea of radiation. So I will take my strings module. Now this is a very large room for this kind of demonstration, but okay, it's not really loud. The reason that it's not loud is that for the string it's very difficult to radiate. There's a very small surface area. If you want sound, we need to move a lot of air. To move a lot of air, we need surface area. So I can connect the strings to the soundboard. And when I do that, it becomes a bit louder. I can use a different radiator. And okay, it's louder. Trust me, it's louder. We can try it in a smaller room. And also the radiator sort of colors the sound a little bit. Another nice example is dispersion. This is one of the modules. Not a lot of sound to the slinky, but again, can you hear that, at least in the front rows? Okay, the pew-pew sound. The idea of pew-pew sound is dispersion. So in a normal material without dispersion, think of a wave in a material. All frequencies, all wavelengths propagate at the same velocity. So this is simplification, right? But they would reach the ear at the same time. So we just hear the sound as it is. Now dispersion, which is something that happens, for instance, in steel, and the slinky is steel, the different waves travel in different velocities. The high frequencies reach the ear first, so we hear the sound sort of broken down from the upper frequencies to the lower frequencies. So, a nice place where you can hear that in nature is ice. Ice is dispersive. So this is one thing that we do with the kit. The other thing is that it helps us sort of map the world of musical instruments. We can think of all the generators that are out there, all the resonators, all the radiators. The purple are fluid mechanics, so air and the way that we excite air, the rest are solids. And we can think of different combinations and see if we have instruments with these combinations. So we can have a little quiz. Can you think of an instrument that we strike, but we're actually striking the air inside a tube? No, but we strike the bells. The bells makes the sound. I'm talking about striking the air.
Who matters?
Yeah.
Tubes?
Yeah. So I'm not showing boom markers, I'm showing phonophones, but it's pretty much the same thing. Okay, obviously the clapper hits the bamboo, but it's not the bamboo that makes sound, it's the air inside the bamboo. An instrument that we blow on strings. There is one, it's called Aeolian harp. It's a harp, you put it under the window, you sort of almost close the window all the way to the end, and there's a jet from outside. An instrument where we plug the air inside an enclosure. So I would say this is plugging air. In the paper we didn't write that, we wrote uncorking a champagne bottle, but think of it, it's the same, because it's not my cheek making the sound, it's the air inside my mouth cavity. I'm putting on the cheek, the air goes into, it's under pressure, right? And then when I release the cheek, I have fluctuations of air. I think this is the last one or another. An instrument where we blow on a tube, the resonator is air vibrating, but it radiates through a board, through a physical board. So this is an effect really, but she sings and her voice is coupled to this metallic soundboard. The metallic soundboard is in resonance and there's strong nonlinearity, so it adds all these inharmonic overtones. It's by the Bachet brothers, and then the final one is again by the Bachet brothers, an instrument where we rub a solid body. We're not rubbing strings like in a violin, we are rubbing a solid body. So there are actually, sorry? I mean, Abilita So fits this description, definitely. I chose a more sort of orthodox example, the Crystal Bachet. But, so we are rubbing glass tubes. The glass tubes are connected to steel tubes or steel rods. The steel rods are the resonators. What we get from all of that is that by running all the combinations, we actually discovered some combinations that we could not find examples of. Like we scoured the internet, we went into the deepest rabbit holes in YouTube, and we could not find a single instance, for instance, of a kalimba with a cone radiator. There's a kalimba, most kalimbas have a soundboard radiator, some have a membrane, it's called a sansula, but we can have a kalimba with a cone radiator, it sounds really nice, but no one bothered to make it. Same goes for violin with a cone. No instrument where you plug a membrane. We usually hit membranes, sometimes we rub membranes, it's called friction drums, like Kukas. But my colleague Francois, he plugs membranes, he takes like 2 small magnets, puts them on the membrane from both sides, and holds the magnet and plugs it. And it makes a different sound than striking. And in the same fashion of the Aeolian harp, where we blow on strings, we can blow on membranes, but no one bothered to do that. So if you're instrument designers or you want to research one of these instruments, this is like our gift for the community. Some instruments that are possible, but no one bothered to make. And this is it for me. I would just say that some instruments just defy all classifications. So we're not going to go through that, but just go ahead and try to identify these. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lior, and thanks Yuval for the amplification. Our next speaker is connecting by Zoom. That's Dganit Elyakim, who's a composer, a sound artist, and she works across a broad spectrum of practices with the aim of depicting different aspects of the human and digital paradigm.
Okay, so I would like to start by thanking Goni, Peles, and Arbel for the invitation. My name is Dganit Elyakim. I'm a composer and transdisciplinary artist. Currently, I'm a doctoral candidate at the University of Music and Performing Arts in Graz, Kuwait. My artistic research supervised by Dr. Marco Siciliani, who we met earlier today, and Dr. Andres Andorschel, focuses on the creation of a digital interactive opera based on computer game technologies, an opera in which the player does not necessarily need prior musical training in order to participate. Presenting some of my works also means highlighting the collaborative dimensions that is central to many of my works. I appreciate the decision to dedicate this conference to the topic of collaboration, as it has become a vital aspect of contemporary artistic practice in general. Well, growing up at a time when home computers were beginning to emerge, I was fascinated by the new interaction between humans and a thinking machine, particularly in relation to music. From my very first composition, the computer served as my collaborator, my first collaborator. As a result, most of my works present some kind of an electroacoustic landscape. The first excerpt I will present is a piece for piano and voice. The text, an homage to poet David Avidan, was generated by poet and artist Eran Hadass using Markov chains to create playful linguistic combinations. In response, the musical composition assigns a distinct musical gesture to each syllable and vowel, thereby reflecting the structural qualities of the text. And here we go.
בבואי לדון את אבידן, בא אני לדון את אבי. אבי אבידן דן בעצמו את עצמו, אבי אבידן דן עצמו עצמו, אבידן דן עם עצמו, אבידן דן עם אבי, אך גם בעת שדן אבידן עם עצמו, לא דן אבידן על עצמו. אבי אבידן דן דן במת עצמו, בעת שדן אבידן עם עצמו, מת עצמו.
My fascination with the medium process of opera, the transformation of operatic forms as it adapts to radio, television, and digital media began in 2011 when I produced my web operetta, Laws of Reflection. The work features HTML blog-like pages, videos presenting poetic arias generated via a computer keyboard that simultaneously produces sound samples and text using ASCII code, and Java-based interactive machines designed in collaboration with, again, Eran Hadass, that allow home participants to create their own arias using their home computers. The dramatic narrative centers on themes of mirroring and the fear of drowning in one's own reflection, articulated throughout the operetta through the exclusive and rigorous use of palindromic sentences juxtaposed with the presence of free improvisers. We will now watch one of those interactions featuring Ronald Burson on viola. Oh, wait. Sorry. 2021, I completed the production of Liberation Through Hearing, created in collaboration with visual artist Shenkar. It is a digital interactive opera based on computer game technologies, a large-scale immersive 2D audiovisual work that combines a dramatic narrative with elements drawn from video games. Players are integrated as both musical and performers and protagonists, positioned at the center of the drama and serving as essential contributors to the sonic landscape. Hand-drawn illustrations form the visual foundation of the opera, with each level defined by a distinct orchestration, original avatars, and a unique setting. As in many video games, the protagonist journeys through a realm populated by imaginative creatures and encounters. However, unlike most games, this opera forgoes scoring competition and the notion of winning. Instead, players navigate a two-dimensional space, generating music through movement and interaction. The dramatic narrative is based on the Bar-Ilan, emphasizes the cultivation of fearlessness, asserting that fear arises from the attachment to the body, identity, thoughts, and even life itself. We will now watch two short excerpts from the levels. While the first one features Michal Oppenheim voices, 6 different voices, and the second introduces Tomer Galili on percussion and Anat Pik as a narrator. These will be followed by an excerpt from a cutscene produced in collaboration with Omer Gal, who designed the puppets and created the stop-motion animation.
A turbid confusion and darkening of normal consciousness. The loss of one's former appetite. Embarrassment and incapacity in undertaking virtuous acts.
Just as your breath stops, a clean light will dawn.
However, after receiving this introduction, as the result of negative obstruction and diversion, the deceased are nonetheless overawed by the lights and rays and turn away, and even if, after repeating the aspirational prayer, they remain bewildered, then, on the second day, an assembly of deities will come to escort them, and, at the same time, the negative past actions which are conductive to a rebirth in hell realm will also emerge.
And currently I am working on the production of The Best Place by the Fire, an operatic trilogy designed as a 3D digital interactive experience that incorporates adaptive music, a dynamic system in which the soundtrack changes in real time in response to the player's actions. We will watch the first scene. Visual is designed in collaboration with Veronica Graham, and the music is composed in collaboration with AI machine.
The line beginning, the line, the end, beginning, end, the line, have, the end, the line, have reached, beginning, the end, have reached, beginning, end of the line, have, beginning of the end, the line, have reached the beginning of end of the line, you have reached the beginning of the end of the line.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dganit. We will now have Daniel Fine from Simply, a musician working at Simply. If some of you don't know, Simply is a company developing educational software for playing music. Daniel, you are a pianist and pianist composer, and you work
as a musician.
Yeah, so I'll just
Hi. So my name is Dani. I'm a pianist, I'm a composer, and arranger, and I'm also a music teacher, a piano teacher. I studied in the Music Academy in Jerusalem and the musicology department in the Hebrew University. And today I'm working in a company called Simply. I will tell you about a little bit about the app, but mostly I will focus about the challenges as a musician in a high-tech company in general, and also as a piano teacher that needs to teach through an app. So a little bit about Simply. I will show you a short video. It's not a commercial, I promise.
Learning something new is always exciting. With Simply, you can learn how to sing, play the piano, and the guitar the fun way. Simply's apps listen to you sing or play a musical instrument and give you feedback in real time. You'll learn all the fundamentals you need to rock the guitar, master the piano, and improve your singing, while enjoying thousands of songs by the world's most popular artists. With Simply Piano, you'll learn notes, chords, how to read sheet music, and how to play with both hands. With Simply Guitar, you'll learn.
I deserve that. Simply easily enables you to start learning and fall in love with a new creative skill through a gradual and empowering learning process. It's a company that was founded in 2011 by Yuval Kaminka and Gal Kaminka and Ray Tzikovsky. And they started by having an educational program in Israel for recorders in schools. Later on, they had an app called Piano Maestro that helped teachers to teach piano. And today we have 4 apps. One of them is Simply Piano, that teaches piano. The second one was Simply Guitar, then Simply Sing. And today we have also skills that teaches drawing. Our goal is to create meaningful moments in every home and make it easy for anyone to spend their leisure time learning creative skills. The main focus is to bring people who doesn't want to go to a teacher or are not able to enjoy the skills they can teach himself at home. And eventually, I'm doing this lecture sometimes to musical teachers that often get very defensive, so I tell you from the start, the app doesn't try to replace anyone. It's a jump up to a musical world where people just want to spend their time at home in a quality way. We are encouraging a supportive environment and enjoyable learning. Well, that's all good and nice, but how do we do it? So I'll give you one example every music teacher knows. I have a kid, for example, that wants to learn a Disney song like Bare Necessities. I'm going to the internet where I have a Disney book, and then I have this arrangement, which is far too difficult for the kids to play. So what the app does, it has certain levels for each kid in his level with a strict pedagogy. So every time I'm knowing that I'm choosing a song for those kind of level, I will get a specific pedagogy that are unique to the app. This is level 1, level 2, and level 3. We also have unique interactive feedback that every time you put in the app on the piano, when you press note, it instinctively tells you if you are right or wrong, if you played in time. We're using a lot of playbacks to help you play at the beginning, so your feeling of playing a whole song is instinctively from the first lesson. Well, that was the commercial part, but now what a musician we're all using simply. This is very complicated because most musicians doesn't come from a technology part and come as a musical teacher, but still I suppose to know how to deal in a high-tech environment. So the musician is responsible for the pedagogy and content. That meaning that I'm coming to the app, I need to think how can I teach people, kids and adults, to learn piano without a teacher, which it's very, very, very challenging. I'm also serving as a bridge between the real world and the app. I need to understand and make people that doesn't come from instrumental pedagogy, how it's in the real world, but in words that I can understand and connect to as product or data or as the developers. But I also need to research and learn myself the technology world to make it work. There are a lot of things that as I will teach it at home, and I want to do it in the app. That in the app, students will fail if I use the same method. And this kind of balance is what's important in my work. Okay, so basically every team in our company has a musician, a product, a developer, a data engineer, and designer. And a musician needs to work with everybody because everything is connected to the mythology. For example, the developer needs to work with me in the technical issues, how to connect the songs, the content, the pedagogy inside the app. It can be even the recognition. Give a small example, for example, how short should the note be? How should they design the time? Everything goes to the musician. And everything is a question if it helps the learner to learn it or not. For the data is to understand how to research. I will show you in the demonstration in a bit. And we want to show you a kind of flows of what a musician needs to do inside the technology world of the high-tech. The easiest part is for me to get an arrangement, to say we have the pedagogy, I have the minuet of Bach, and need to think how to do it with our pedagogy, to change the scale, to make it simpler, to build the playback, to use a lot of frequent finger numbers, and etc. This is the easy part. Well, it's not easy, but it's for my domain. Later, the developer can ask me, okay, you can now upload it to the app. No one will upload it to the app for me. I need to understand the mechanic, to use JSON files, to understand the system, and also it can change my musical thinking and pedagogy when I see the in-game itself. So all this need to be in my consideration when I build it. I also need to address things like configuration and titles and BGMs and even covers, so it will be connected to the things that they want to play. Later, I don't know if you can translate this, but what do you see now? It's notes. It's kind of new sight reading that we use it to write the notes, and I need to read it like I read music. You can see here the tempo, and you can see the clefs, and you can see the hand, and you can see the breaks, and the notes itself. And I need to read it in real time because this is how it's entered to the app. So all this kind of stuff, it requires for me to get into the required technical thinking. Later, I release a song, and the data engineer reports to me that most of the children open the song, play until the middle, and then stop and quit. What's the conclusion? Why does he need to ask me? That's the data analyst. He does it 1,000 times and all kind, because there is a musical perspective that only a musician can have for it. And I can't be just intuitive about it. Is the song too challenging? My song might be not suited for kids. Is there something about the cover image? I need to go to a research with a data engineer and think together what is reasonable to fix it. Also products, which is a very complex thing to understand, especially when teaching piano. I will give you an example I really like. One is a true story. One of the product manager looks at the rest symbols when not to play. He said, if we didn't teach them yet, why do we need it? And as a musician, to get rid in sight reading from something so basic as breath was really difficult for me. But I thought about it. It's an app, it's an e-game, it's a different language. Could it be reasonable? Does it distract them from reading the notes if they don't understand? If you see a lot of lines and the in-game is running from them, from right to left, do I help them, or I'm just going traditional with my way of thinking as a pianist? So I always need to think, how do we know if something educational that I'm used to is working the app or not? When it's time to go to the real world, when we need to understand we are in a new turf that we try to teach in a new media. Do we really know the teaching method we are using or not? And are we relying only on what we know, or need to discover new opportunities? I can tell you, for example, to show the learner if he's right or wrong is very easy. It's pressing a button in the end. But sensitivity, dynamics, articulation, this is hard. We just at the beginning to understand and helping developing this kind of world, which is so important when teaching piano. So I can tell you what I did. I said, okay, I don't want to get rid of the rest notes. I said, do it Blair. I don't know if you see the rest notes. Do it a bit. They won't see it very much. Then the designer came along and said, no way. This is horrible. This is worse. Believe me, I know it will just distract them. We went to user testing. We saw it in kids, and she was right. And eventually, what we did, we demolished all the rest notes until we teach them to the right lesson. And what happened is that they played much, much better, which was really, really very interesting. In the end, the portrait intuition in this case was right. If I didn't thought it in the beginning, and if they have a lot of signs that distract them to sing the notes themselves, and it didn't help them to understand the rhythm, it was better at this point not to bring them along to the step itself. This is just another example of kind of flexibility you need to have when you're building the pedagogy inside the app. I'm using a lot of user testing to see and teach, and the musician part in user testing is very important because this is the point you give your expertise as a music teacher. You know how to help, how to be sensitive with people that come to play. As you know, people, even when you teach teach piano, people can, you say to them, we're not testing you, we're testing the app, people get really sensitive when they play. This is exactly the place when a music teacher can bring his expertise, because not all follow only what they're playing, and following their eyes, their reaction, thing that I'm using my experience as a music teacher to understand if something worked or not. So, to summary, The musician must translate the musical and pedagogical ideas into the technology platform. They need to be proficient in music production and notation tools. This is the part that is most easier, it's come from our world. But they all should need to analyze the app, to understand the world, to understand the most important thing that I'm always saying, there is no teacher in the room. The smallest thing is, take your hand and play this note, or this is middle C. When you don't have a teacher, the solutions are really complicated. So this is exactly the part that the musician needs to understand, not his world also, but the app and the technology world, to get to the results that I want. And what my job is to make people play better piano or guitar or singing through the app. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Danny. Our last speaker for the session, afterwards we will have a discussion, is Arnon, who is a creator that is active at the intersection of different domains, the visual, the spatial, and also sound. A key theme in his work is a sense of place, and that was also the topic of his PhD at the Montfort University in Leicester in the UK. But he also holds an MA in architecture, and he's a retired professor of what?
Architecture and urban culture.
Architecture and urban culture, sorry. And he's also a retired professor of creative arts at Bezalel. Also a designer, I think. Also a designer. So, the microphone is yours.
Dear David, we were delighted to get your letter, and I read it aloud to Sydney over our breakfast this morning. Although it is 4 months since you've written it, I feel sure that you are well and happy and getting on with the job. I'm going to send this letter by airmail because a girl in the office whose husband is in Egypt recommends this as being the quickest way to get mail over. There is to be a new system by which letters are to be photographed, shipped over by air as film negative, and then printed and delivered on the other side. Perhaps this scheme will enable us to hear more often from each other. Your description of Cairo was very realistic, and I was enthralled. I've never been away from these little islands, so my knowledge of the rest of the world is to rely on descriptions such as you've given me. And I love to hear about these enchanting places in the East. Smell,
sent from England in 1941 to my father during his station in Cairo as a British Royal Air Force radio operator. It is extracted from a 30-minute audiovisual composition. Perhaps this scheme would enable us to hear more often from each other, that I created as part of my practice-based PhD portfolio, the work to which I will return in the final part of my presentation. The scheme to which the letter refers was a rather complex system of geographically distributed technological devices called aircraft service. The system used microfilm and air transport to provide lightweight, small-sized photo letter and swift delivery of correspondence throughout the British Empire during the Second World War. The aircraft in the photo, which is an actual outcome of this system, is addressed to my father and is one of many I found in a box of letters after his death. But to proceed to the topic of this session, between disciplines, I want to focus on the metaphorical extension of the word here to encompass written communication. This may be a product of the historical primacy of oral communication before widespread literacy, or a natural development of figurative language to describe communication in general, regardless of the physical means of transmission and reception. One way or another, this form of conceptual sensory transfer, in which a sensory effect, seeing, is associated with a different sensory experience, hearing, undoubtedly relates to the actual ability of the auditory and ocular senses to influence each other's perception. Philosopher Maurice Merleau-Ponty calls this the communication of the senses. In what follows, I will showcase samples from my work spanning 2 decades of interdisciplinary exploration of this intersensory dialogue and the practical examination of transfer relations between spatial, visual, and sonic arts, the oral as suggested by the visual alone and vice versa, the reciprocal relations, and ultimately their fusion. Coming from a background in visual communications, I chose to start with 3 music album covers I designed that convey sonic attributes beyond typical music packaging conventions, which often rely on the artist's portrait or images related to the album's title or lyrics. The left cover features a typographical representation of the syllables Aninanat, meaning giant alligator in Hebrew, as pronounced by Corinne Al in the song of the same name. In the middle, in Bal Perlmutter's last recording, delves into abstract sound elements like grain, ambience, and distortion. Lastly, Alon Farber's Hadiga cover visualizes rhythm through fragmented portraits of the group members. For the Biennale of Israel Ceramics in 2011, I created a series of ceramic acoustic vessels combined with an electronic sound system called Metronome. This project contrasts ceramics' tactile and craft-oriented nature with digital elements, exploring the relationship between sound and visual rhythmic cycles I experienced during the production process on the throw wheel, working on the throw wheel, and is perceived by the viewer/listener. 7 years earlier, I still had the curly hair and black. At the independent art event, He'ara, held in the historic Anglican Hospital in Jerusalem, I experimented in collaboration with 2 of my music group mates and 3 EKG monitors attached to us, improvising with our heartbeats while displaying the pulse drops for the audience to see and hear. Same year, I presented a site-specific video and sound installation at the public arts event in Jerusalem's Nachlaot neighborhood, this time incorporating space into the work. Drawing on my experiences across visual communication, architecture, and music, I embarked on a practice-based PhD to delve into the potential of interdisciplinary approaches which can be transformed into practical applications. My research examined diverse art forms, including installation art, documentary film, video and moving image, soundscapes, graphic scores, and visual music through the prism of one of the spatial, visual, and sonic spheres. One comment: the term visual music, central to this research, typically refers to screen-based genre that combines abstract imagery that moves in parallel with music. To clarify the essence of this term within the scope of this talk and provide a foundation for the upcoming slides, I will define it more inclusively as an artistic approach that embodies conceptual, creative, and perceptual synergy between visual arts and music. Regarding the sense of place part of the equation, the research examines how sounds affect our visual perception of a place at a given time, and vice versa. It also questions how images and sounds, whether combined or separate, convey contextual information, and how context affects our understanding of these perceptions. The first example from the research portfolio is a sample of a sound video, Chromatic Automatic Pilot, a 9.5-minute loop capturing the flight from Sde Dor Airport in Tel Aviv, which doesn't exist anymore, to Rosh Pila in northern Israel. In this work, landscape data is converted into sound using 72 pixels, pre-programmed and organized as a note system and a chromatic scale, while triggering 4 note combinations at a time to be manipulated by grayscale values of each pixel, resulting in varied sounds and frequencies and volumes. Sample is from the video Roundabout Midday, which in this case uses real-world sounds. It features a 12-minute recording of a traffic flow that I captured in southern England, fragmented and rearranged to create a polyphony of accelerating and decelerating sonic and visual genres. Finally, perhaps this scheme will enable us to hear more often from each other, the centerpiece of my research portfolio, with which I open my talk today. It was on view to the public at the University's gallery in Leicester in 2019, and again last summer at the Artist Hub in Tel Aviv as part of a solo exhibition of mine. You heard me, right? This 30-minute poetic documentary featuring visual and auditory impressions of a voyage was conceived as an immersive, large-scale installation comprising 4 projection screens and 13 speakers. It is based on video and field recordings I took over 2 years during my travel to locations in Israel, England, Switzerland, Poland, Greece, and North Macedonia, places that relate to my family history and current personal circumstances. To these, I incorporated excerpts from a letter that I opened the talk with, as well as sound layers, including spoken word, Morse code signals, manipulated real-world sounds, and synthesized sounds. The latter were generated through parametric mapping of the video matrix and influenced by the video's visual flukes, adding rich ambience and providing an energetic clue that binds image and sound together through shared gestures and textures. The image on the screen is a visualization of the actual composition as it was performed. I did it just to explain the complexity of the work for my PhD thesis. The work itself was done in an improvisational manner. To conclude, here is a short video documenting the presentation of the work in the UK. Thank you.
Thank you, Asher. We will now have a discussion. I'd like to invite all the speakers of this section to the stage. And let's connect also. Yeah, so to start the discussion and with a broad question, and then we'll open it up to also you if you have any thoughts or any questions. What I'm curious seeing all the work is we see the benefits of interdisciplinary work, so it would be a bit naive to ask what are the benefits. And we also talked a little bit about barriers, especially in Daniel's presentation. something around language and the way we represent it. I'm curious about these challenges, for example, in your work. What are the barriers for you? What did you experience? Because what you showed was very wonderful and nice, but what are the ugly parts of this work?
And generally speaking, not that specific research that I showed, but my work in the past 10 years or so. There's this phrase that I once read, universities are divided into faculties, but reality isn't. And then, okay, so I got into this game because I was a child dreaming to make musical instruments, and I started that as a hobby, and then I tried to make that a profession. And okay, reality isn't divided into faculties, so I can just say that I do music technology and I build instruments and I code and da. But then when you go to the established, it could be universities, startup companies, industries, whatever, they are divided into these little boxes, and then being interdisciplinary, you don't quite fit. That's my impression usually. And I think this is the biggest challenge. That specific postdoc was maybe the easiest part of my career because it was in France, and there they happened to have that box for music acoustics. There are other boxes that they lack, okay? It's not a perfect country, but it just happened that we had this compatibility. But for the most part, I don't have that compatibility, and this, to me, is the biggest challenge. I'm always the outlier.
Interesting. That's an issue with universities and with reality, and I guess we are all kind of outliers in different contexts. Dganit, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. That's good. What for you are the challenges? You work a little bit differently. You work in a team, which is maybe in a way the artistic parallel of simply in a way, at least the way the work is practiced by different people.
One, I would like to say, in collaborations, one thing that I always find present is once the collaborator is happy to collaborate, it works great, and once a collaborator is not interested in a project, then it becomes a nightmare. So that would be the first thing I would mention here. But I do agree with what was said here about this idea of framing, trying to frame your work either if you are a composer, so it must be a musical composition, but then again, if it doesn't completely answer to the criteria of what is an excellent musical composition, then, and once you do, you work with interdisciplinary, you do take into account the fact that you have to reduce the volume of the intensity of certain aspects of your work to let others exist as well, which means while I compose a piece for an ensemble, the intensity of my music can grow once when I work with visual elements and other elements. I have to also take into account that right now the participants have to divide their attention between all senses, and it cannot be a saturation of all senses. So, and with that aspect, yes, it does fall on these boxes when you look for more like career residencies, doesn't matter what opportunities. Yes, it's still, the world is not completely ready for that.
I think that's what we're trying to do in a way, to prepare the world for this. Danny, how do you see that in your workplace? Do you also feel that you have to tune down some of your aspects of a characteristics as a musician?
For sure. I talked a lot about the challenges, so maybe we can do the opposite. I will talk about the opportunities, because we look at a traditional way of teaching music that was observed for hundreds of years through a page, an instrument, a person, and a teacher, and now we have a whole new turf of new possibilities. Like in making music with technology, also the educational part could be more creative, maybe using lights or colors, or all kinds of aspects that we didn't discover yet that can be more suitable to this kind of teaching, but not only in the narrow way of a teaching app, maybe as a teaching tool in general that we can use. And I think it's important to keep an open mind to it. I showed one example, but in also other ways, when it's important to pull back, to see, listen, you have an excellent idea, but it doesn't go with the teaching method or with the instrument itself as a teacher, but also maybe now it's time to look for other ways, new ways, that can help us discover a new pedagogical approach.
And I will use this finale of your answer and direct the question to Asher. So you're the most experienced of all of us with institutions. How can we enable such work? How can we go in this direction that Danny suggested?
First of all, I'm totally familiar with this barrier of having departments and academies. I come from the Bezalel Academy, and in a certain stage when I began diving into the oral part, into music and sound, etc., and I even claim that I'm dealing with multidisciplinary material, I became a suspect right away. And I felt it in many ways. So I'm familiar with it. And I think, and what I've learned, and as I noted, in a way that was the reason of beginning a PhD in a rather late stage after quite a lot of experience. I was lucky to be accepted to a music department that is interested in interdisciplinarity. And how can music be approached from by different disciplines, not all music departments like that. But I will, and I have the pretension of juggling more than one ball. But I want to quote the professor that examined me every year, each and every year, in my annual review, moving from one year to another to give me the go or no go, saying, since you have chosen to undertake a PhD in the music department, I suggest so and so and so. And I took him very, very, very seriously, to the extent that my supervisors were laughing at me. Because I really thought that I need to learn more on the other part, and which is the musical part, and develop maybe if not a deep musical knowledge, I will not become John Coltrane, yes, but to develop an intuition. And the experience field and develop an intuition which is different from the visual intuition. And that's what happened to me during my PhD. It was a curve like that, developing that intuition. So I think that if I can contribute something is whether it's if one person incorporates these different skills or in a team, I think it's important that to a certain level, each and everyone in the team, of course, different personalities within one person, will understand the crossover nature of each sense alone to express the other sense. How can I express sound via image, or how can I express image via sound? And I'm not speaking about literal associations. I'm talking more about the material of the things. In our discussions before today, I was using the term I once used in a convention in which I lectured about interdisciplinary teaching, because I also conducted quite a few courses in Bezalel under the name of visual music. And I use the term being a double agent. You need to be a double agent. You need to be here and there in order to undermine the discipline from which you come and suggest something new.
I think that's a great way to formulate it. Double agent, that's perfect.
You can become a triple agent.
Triple or what? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The sky. Yeah.
My name is Amos. I'm a musician.
You want a microphone?
No, I'll speak up.
Yeah.
My name is Amos. I'm a musician and a high-tech veteran. I wanted to. I'm fascinated by the way that Asher and Dganit and others interacted between the different media types and technologies. The way that you presented the movie that is sensing different pixels in the movie and creating or generating music out of that, this is a very clear concept to me. It's coming from both worlds. I wanted to address Dganit with a question about your last project that you presented, and you mentioned that the music was co-written by an AI. How is the work being done between the person and an AI in generating music, and how is the user? You mentioned also that there were active participants who played the game or controlled the game, and how is that affecting the music, and how is so there are two questions. One is the composer and AI, and the second one is how is the user or the participant influencing the online music?
Great questions, I must say. Well, when it comes to the interaction between me and the AI, it's a process that I'm still figuring it out. I mean, and it comes through experience, simply like that. So eventually what I get by working, I worked with an AI choir to create the vocals, especially the vocals. Well, and there you don't give the AI machine certain notes, at least the one that I'm working with. It's more trying to direct it to a certain atmosphere. But then comes me as the collaborator, not someone who just takes the output. And yes, I sliced it as a tape piece, as I do with tape pieces. And I created a musical form out of it, which has certain elements, and also I included in the musical composition there, for example, a sample of a trumpet, and what else? I think the sample of trumpet. Oh no, and a piano quote from the Lior by Schubert. I have a thingy with Schubert that goes for years. So yes, you have that. When it comes to the user and AI, that is a super interesting question for me. How to include a person who is not musically trained. That is fine when it comes to the controllers themselves. I mean, the controller is your keyboard, your computer keyboard. But then again, how do you teach someone to listen to what they're doing without preaching And that is the most interesting question when it comes to both operas, both Liberation through Hearing and the last one. And that comes through a certain series of restrictions that I introduce, that are not like apparent, but I introduce in each and every level. So, for example, the level you've seen, basically most of the music is fixed. By moving to the left and right, you filter certain aspects of the noises that appear at the background, and you filter, you pan the music from left to right. Very simple interactions to create a very coherent picture for the player. That's all I can say.
I think we have time for just one short question. Yes.
Okay.
There we go. Yeah. We needed that. That's what we need to do.
Okay, so I'm Rami Zamir from Electrical Engineering in Tel Aviv University. And I wonder about interdisciplinarity, if it's something good to start with it in a young age, let's say in undergrad, or maybe we should think about people who have major minors. So they are expert in one thing, in one box, and then they go to the other circle or box and they bring something they learn or they have experience in, and then they can suggest some contribution to the other circle. Or you think it's good to start from the beginning as an interdisciplinary person?
Hi, Rami.
You started somewhere, I know where you started.
My personal thoughts on that, it really depends on the person. I don't know what's better or worse, but I can describe both options. I think being interdisciplinary is not necessarily a good career choice. So if you want to be a professor at the youngest age possible, or you want to have a startup company at the youngest age possible, maybe it's not the safest way to go. But being interdisciplinary is a lot of fun. It's I think that if I weren't doing what I was doing, I was just I wouldn't like my job, you know. So just understand what it is. And from my own experience, I think that having this minor major, the way you describe, it's a practical compromise, but I did meet some young people that when I asked them to conceive of that possibility, they couldn't really wait that long. You're telling me that I need to study this, and then only in 4 years, I gotta get to do what I really wanna do. So, yes, I would recommend that, but I know it's not for everyone. This is sort of the trade-off the way I see it.
I think about when kids come to play piano, 3 years before, they're already introduced to iPads, computers, and phones. So I already lost that world, and I think we need to adjust a bit to the world as is today, which is multidisciplinary, if we want or not, and also we are very influenced by it. It's the same question can be, should I play only in young age one instrument or two? This is two disciplinaries that I can be an expert in the piano for 5-6 years and maybe then go to the guitar, and I think it's really different from person to person, but I think we should move on with several disciplines and to see the world as it is, that it mixes more and more different disciplinary fields along the way. And some person will favor to just focus on one thing, and that's okay. But we can use it, like in educational time, take the iPad time, for example, to do something more meaningful, for example, learning a skill. And this is the way we can use it as an advantage and not distract the opportunity to learn one thing until you master it and then go to the next one. So this is my opinion about it.
we have to finish. I hate to cut this discussion because I think it can be much longer, but please continue it over lunch. Yeah, thank you.